Ilara didn't see the envelope until it landed on the gift table, right between the hand-knitted blankets and the silver rattle engraved with the Valdrin crest. One moment she was laughing at something Marin said, her hand resting on her swollen belly where her baby had just kicked for the 100th time that day. The next, silence crashed through the great hall like a wave of ice water. She looked up to find her husband standing in the doorway. Theron, Alpha King of Valdrin, the man who had whispered promises against her skin just that morning, who had kissed her forehead and told her he couldn't wait to meet their child, was staring at her like she was a stranger. His dark hair, usually swept back with careless elegance, fell across his forehead in disarray, but it was his eyes that gutted her, iron gray and colder than she'd ever seen them. Theron? Ilara's voice came out uncertain. What's wrong? I thought you were in council until evening. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward her with measured steps, each footfall echoing against the stone floor. The guests parted around him like water around a blade. Ilara saw their faces, confusion giving way to fear, and something cold began to uncurl in her stomach. Open it. Theron stopped 3 feet away from her. His voice was flat, empty of every tender note she'd come to cherish over their 2 years of marriage. Ilara's fingers trembled as she reached for the envelope. The paper was thick, official, stamped with the royal seal she'd seen on treaties and death warrants. She broke the wax with clumsy hands. The words blurred, then sharpened into focus. Dissolution of the mating bond, annulment of marriage, revocation of Luna status. The document slipped from her fingers. I don't understand. She looked up at him, searching his iron-gray eyes for some hint of the man who had held her through her nightmares, who had wept when he first heard their baby's heartbeat. Theron, what is this? It's exactly what it looks like. His jaw tightened, every muscle rigid with barely contained fury. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and leave the palace. You will not take anything that belongs to the crown. You will not speak to anyone on your way out. And you will never set foot in Valdrin territory again. Ilara's hand flew to her belly, instinct overriding shock. Our baby is not mine. The words hit her like a physical blow. We both know it. The great hall had transformed into a courtroom. Ilara could feel 100 eyes boring into her, whispers slithering through the crowd like snakes. Women she'd called friends. Advisors who had bowed to her just yesterday. All of them watching her world collapse. Theron, I have never been unfaithful to you. Ilara forced steel into her voice even as her heart splintered. Not once. Not ever. I don't know what you've been told, but it's a lie. A lie? Something dangerous flickered across his face. He reached into his coat and withdrew a bundle of letters, bound with a red ribbon she recognized instantly. It was hers. From her private writing desk. Then explain these. He threw them at her feet. Ilara didn't need to read them. She could see the handwriting from where she stood. Elegant loops that looked almost like hers, but weren't. Love letters. Passionate, explicit, addressed to someone named My Secret Heart, and signed with her initial. I didn't write those. Her voice cracked. Theron, look at me. You know my handwriting. You've read 1,000 notes from me. Look closely and you'll see. I've had 3 scribes analyze them. He cut her off, cold as winter steel. They confirm the match. Then they're wrong, or they're lying, or someone forged them. Ilara stepped toward him, desperate. Please, just give me a chance to prove. You've had 2 years to prove your loyalty. Theron's voice rose, filling the hall with barely contained fury. 2 years of secret meetings and whispered conversations. 2 years of disappearing for hours with no explanation. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was that blind? The accusations hit her like arrows, each one more bewildering than the last. Secret meetings? She'd been visiting the healers for her difficult pregnancy, whispered conversations, planning his birthday celebration with Marin, disappearing for hours, an innocent explanation. Ilara's tears, an innocent explanation. Ilara's tears spilled over, hot against her cold cheeks. If you'd just asked me, talked to me instead of what? Giving you time to spin more lies? He laughed, bitter and broken. I trusted you, Ilara. I gave you everything. My heart, my throne, my people. And you repaid me by spreading your legs for another man and trying to pass his bastard off as my heir. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ilara felt something inside her snap. Not break. Snap. Like a bone forced past its limit. How dare you? Her voice came out low, shaking with rage. How dare you speak about our child that way? I have loved you faithfully since the day we met. I have bled for this pack, sacrificed for this crown, and endured every cruel whisper from people who thought I wasn't good enough for you. And this is how you repay me? Public humiliation based on forged letters? For one heartbeat, something flickered in Theron's eyes. Doubt. Pain. The ghost of the man she'd married. Then it vanished, locked away behind walls of ice. Take her to her chambers, he ordered the guards. She has 1 hour. The guards flanked her like she was a criminal. Ilara walked through the halls she'd come to call home, past tapestries she'd helped choose, past servants who wouldn't meet her eyes. Her hand never left her belly, as if she could shield her baby from the nightmare unfolding around them. Ilara, wait. The voice made her stumble. She turned to find Lysandre hurrying toward her, silk skirts rustling, golden hair catching the torchlight like a halo. Theron's younger sister, the woman who had welcomed Ilara into the family when no one else would, who had held her hand through the early months of pregnancy and promised to be the best aunt the baby could ask for. Lysandre. Ilara's voice broke with relief. Thank the gods. You have to talk to him. You have to make him see reason. Those letters aren't mine. Someone is framing me. Lysandre's face crumpled with sympathy. She took Ilara's hands, squeezing gently. Oh, Ilara. Sweet, foolish Ilara. The words didn't register at first. The tone did. What? Did you really think you could keep it hidden forever? Lysandre's eyes glittered, and Ilara realized with dawning horror that it wasn't sympathy in them. To keep? Ilara's blood turned to ice to keep? Ilara's blood turned to ice. There was no guard. There were no meetings. Lysandre, what are you? Shh. Lysandre pressed a finger to Ilara's lips, leaning close enough that only she could hear. You should have stayed in whatever backwater village my brother found you in. The Luna seat was never meant for a nobody like you. I tried to warn him, you know. Tried to tell him that common blood would always show its true colors eventually. The truth crashed over Ilara like a collapsing wall. It was you. The words came out strangled. You forged the letters. You fed him lies. You... Careful. Lysandre's smile was a knife wrapped in velvet. Accusations like that could be considered treason, and we both know how my brother handles traitors. She stepped back, raising her voice so the guards could hear. I'm so sorry, Ilara. I truly thought you were different. I'll pray to the moon goddess for your soul. Then she swept away, leaving Ilara frozen in the corridor, the magnitude of the betrayal settling over her like a shroud. Lysandre, her sister-in-law, her friend. The woman she'd trusted with her fears and her hopes and her excitement about the baby. The woman who had just stolen everything from her. The guards gripped her arms, pulling her forward. Ilara's legs moved mechanically, carrying her toward chambers that were no longer hers, toward a future that had just fractured into 1,000 jagged pieces. 1 hour. She had 1 hour to gather the fragments of her life. 1 hour before she was cast out into a world that no longer had a place for her. And somewhere beneath her racing heart, her baby kicked again, a tiny flutter of life that reminded her she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. Elara placed her hand over the movement and made a silent vow. She would survive this. She would uncover the truth. And when she did, Lysandre would learn exactly what happened to people who underestimated a mother protecting her child. The guards opened her chamber door and shoved her inside. The lock clicked behind her like a death knell. Elara packed with numb efficiency. 2 dresses. Her mother's pearl hairpin, the only keepsake she had of the woman who died bringing her into the world. A leather journal filled with sketches she'd made during her pregnancy. Tiny drawings of the baby she'd imagined, the nursery she'd planned, the future that no longer existed. She left behind the silk gowns Theron had commissioned for her, the jewelry that bore the Valdrin crest, the crown she'd worn exactly once, at their bonding ceremony, when he'd looked at her like she hung the moon and stars. None of it was hers anymore. Perhaps it never had been. A soft knock broke the silence. The door cracked open, and Marin slipped inside, her round face blotchy with tears. I tried to speak to him. Marin's voice was barely a whisper. He wouldn't listen. Elara, I know you didn't do this. I know those letters are lies. Lysandre. The name tasted like poison. She forged them. She admitted it to me in the corridor, quiet enough that no one else could hear. Marin's eyes widened. That viper. I always knew there was something wrong with her. The way she smiled too sweetly, agreed too easily. But I never thought. Neither did I. Elara cinched her bag closed. And now it doesn't matter. I have no proof, just my word against hers, and we both know whose word Theron will believe. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if protesting the injustice. Marin pressed a small pouch into Elara's hands. Loyalty to the crown. Tell her I sent you loyalty to the crown. Tell her I sent you. She'll give you shelter. Tears blurred Elara's vision. Marin, I can't. You can, and you will. Marin gripped her shoulders. You're the strongest woman I know, Elara. Survive this. Find the truth. And when you're ready, burn Lysandre's world to ashes. The door burst open. 2 guards stood in the threshold. Time's up, the larger one said, not meeting her eyes. The Alpha King wants you gone before sunset. Marin squeezed Elara's hand one final time, then stepped away, her expression carefully neutral, playing the role of obedient subject while her heart broke in silence. Elara walked out of the palace with her head high. She didn't look back. Not at the gardens where Theron had first kissed her. Looking back would destroy her. And she. Looking back would destroy her. And she couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. The palace gates closed behind her with a groan of iron. Elara stood on the road, alone, exiled, carrying everything she owned in a single bag and everything she loved beneath her heart. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. She turned east, toward the mountains, and started walking. The journey took 4 days. Elara traveled on foot for the first day until a farmer's wife took pity on her pregnant form and offered a ride in her cart. She slept in barns and hedgerows, ate sparingly from the food she'd managed to grab before leaving, and tried not to think about the life growing inside her, depending on her to survive. Thornwick was exactly as Marin had described, a village so small it barely qualified as a dot on any map. 50 stone cottages clustered around a single well, sheep grazing on the hillsides, the smell of peat smoke and bread baking. Marin's grandmother was named Orin, a tiny woman with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that missed nothing. So you're the Luna who wasn't. Orin studied Elara from her doorway, taking in the travel-stained dress, the exhausted eyes, the protective hand curved over where the babies rested. Marin's letter arrived by Raven yesterday. Come in before you collapse. The cottage was small but warm, filled with dried herbs and the comforting scent of wood smoke. Oren sat Alara down by the fire, pressed a bowl of stew into her hands, and waited. Alara ate mechanically, barely tasting the food, then told her everything. The baby shower, the divorce papers, the forged letters, Lysandre's whispered confession. When she finished, Oren was quiet for a long moment. Lysandre Valdrin, the old woman finally said. I remember her mother. Same golden hair, same poisoned smile. She tried to have me burned as a witch 40 years ago because I refused to give her a love potion. Oren's lips curved into something sharp. Some bloodlines carry rot through every generation. You know her? I know the type. Oren leaned forward. Tell me, girl, these letters that were supposedly yours, did anyone besides the scribes examine them? Alara frowned. Theron said 3 scribes confirmed the handwriting matched mine. And who appointed those scribes? The question hung in the air. Ilara's mind raced backward. The palace scribes served at the pleasure of the royal family. Their appointments were handled by the Master of Records, who reported directly to the King's Council, which was overseen by Theron's closest advisor, his sister Lysandre. She controls the scribes, Alara breathed. She could have paid them off, or threatened them, or replaced them entirely. Now you're thinking. Oren's eyes glittered with approval. The question isn't whether you're innocent. You know the answer to that. The question is how to prove it to a man who's been poisoned against you by someone he loves. Ilara stared into the fire, her mind churning. Lysandre had planned this carefully. Months of groundwork, maybe longer. The forged letters, the bribed scribes, the whispered insinuations that had made Theron suspicious of innocent behavior. But careful plans always had cracks. Every lie required maintenance. Every conspiracy involved witnesses. Somewhere, somehow, there had to be proof. I need to find out who actually wrote those letters, Alara said slowly. The real forger. Someone had to craft them, and it wasn't Lysandre. Her handwriting is nothing like mine. Oren smiled, cold and knowing. Then that's where we start. The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm of survival and investigation. Oren had connections Alara never would have expected. Former servants dismissed from noble houses. Traders who traveled between territories. A network of ordinary people who saw everything and were seen by no one. Messages went out. Discreet inquiries, careful questions about scribes and forgers, and a golden-haired princess who smiled too sweetly. While they waited for answers, Alara tried to heal. It was harder than she'd expected. Not the physical recovery, though the pregnancy drained her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The emotional wounds were deeper, jagged edges that caught on every memory. She dreamed of Theron constantly, not the cold stranger who had thrown divorce papers at her feet. The other Theron, the one who had found her in that border village 3 years ago, a nobody serving ale in her uncle's tavern. He'd been traveling in disguise, trying to escape the weight of his crown for a single evening, and she treated him like any other customer because she hadn't known any better. He'd come back the next night, and the next, and the next. Why do you keep returning? She'd finally asked, half annoyed and half intrigued. The ale isn't that good. No, he'd agreed, those iron-gray eyes soft in the firelight. But you are. Alara woke from these dreams with tears on her cheeks and an ache in her chest that threatened to swallow her whole. She hated him. She had to hate him. He'd humiliated her, cast her out, and called their baby a bastard in front of everyone she'd known. But hatred and love weren't opposites. They were neighbors, sharing walls so thin that sounds bled through constantly. One morning, Oren found her retching behind the cottage, pale and shaking. This sickness is lasting longer than it should. The old woman pressed a hand to Alara's forehead, then lower to her abdomen. Her eyes widened. Girl, has anyone told you? Told me what? Oren helped her stand, guiding her back inside with unusual gentleness. The reason you're so exhausted. The reason the pregnancy has been so difficult. Oren sat her down, keeping hold of her hands. You're not carrying one child, Alara. You're carrying two. The world tilted. Twins? A boy and a girl, if I'm reading the signs correctly. Oren's weathered face softened. Strong heartbeats, both of them. Fighters, like their mother. Alara's hands flew to her belly, feeling the familiar flutter of movement with new understanding. Two lives, two children. Theron's children, no matter what lies he'd been fed. She thought about him, alone in that cold palace, surrounded by vipers, believing his mate had betrayed him, believing his heirs weren't his. For one moment the anger cracked, and all she felt was grief. Then she sealed it away, locked it in the same box where she kept her broken heart. Grief was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not when she had two babies depending on her. Not when Lysandre was still out there, enjoying the fruits of her betrayal. I need proof, Alara said, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her face. I need to find whoever forged those letters, and I need to expose Lysandre before she ruins anything else. As if in answer, a raven landed on the windowsill, a tiny scroll tied to its leg. Oren retrieved it, unrolled the paper, and a slow smile spread across her face. It seems the gods are listening. She handed the message to Alara. We've found your forger. The forger's name was Cedric Hollow, a disgraced scribe who had once served in the royal archives before being dismissed for gambling debts. Paid off his debts, bought new clothes. Paid off his debts, bought new clothes. Started drinking at the expensive taverns instead of the gutter holes, and he'd been heard bragging, after too much wine, about a golden goose who had paid him handsomely for his particular talents. Alara couldn't travel. The twins had made sure of that. At 7 months pregnant, she could barely walk to the well without needing to rest, so Oren went instead, armed with a purse of silver and instructions to offer Cedric more money than Lysandre had paid in exchange for the truth. She returned 5 days later with a leather satchel and a grim expression. He's dead, Oren said, setting the satchel on the table. Throat slit in his room 2 nights before I arrived. The locals are calling it a robbery gone wrong. Alara's stomach dropped. Lysandre? Almost certainly, she's cleaning up loose ends. Oren opened the satchel, but our friend Cedric was cleverer than he looked. He kept insurance. She pulled out a bundle of papers, practice sheets, covered in handwriting exercises. Alara's name, written over and over, each attempt closer to perfect. Sample letters with corrections in a different hand, elegant and feminine. And at the bottom of the bundle, a single note. Payment for services rendered. Destroy this upon completion. LV, Lysandre's initials, Lysandre's handwriting. Alara's hands shook as she held the evidence. Proof. Actual, tangible proof that she'd been framed. This could save me, she breathed. If Theron sees this, he'll have to choose between believing his eyes and believing his sister. Oren's voice was cautious. Men in his position don't always choose truth. Sometimes pride is louder. He'll believe it. Alara clutched the papers like a lifeline. He has to. But even as she said the words, doubt crept in. The Theron who had loved her would have believed. But the Theron who had thrown divorce papers at her feet, who had called their children bastards, who had looked at her with contempt instead of tenderness. She didn't know that man at all. There's something else. Oren's expression darkened. My contact in the capital sent word. Lysandre isn't content with just removing you. She's been whispering in her brother's ear about remarriage. There's a princess from the Southern Isles. Young, beautiful, politically advantageous. The formal courtship begins next month. The words landed like a blade between Alara's ribs. Remarriage. He was going to replace her, replace their children, build a new family on the ashes of the one Lysandre had burned. Something hardened inside Ilara, the last soft, hopeful part of her that had imagined Theron discovering the truth on his own, riding to find her, begging forgiveness. That fantasy was dead now. If she wanted justice, she would have to take it herself. I'm going back. Ilara stood, one hand braced on the table for balance. I'm going to confront Lysandre publicly, show everyone what she did, and clear my name. You're 7 months pregnant with twins. Oren raised an eyebrow. You can barely stand. Then I'll sit while I destroy her. Ilara's jaw set. I won't let her win. I won't let my children grow up believing their mother was a traitor. And I won't let Theron marry some princess while his real mate is living in exile because of his sister's lies. Oren studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. There's the fire I was waiting to see. She began gathering supplies. We'll need to plan this carefully. Lysandre has spies everywhere. If she learns you're coming before you're ready to strike, she'll try to kill me like she killed Cedric. Ilara nodded. I know. But she thinks I'm broken. She thinks I'm hiding in some forgotten corner of the kingdom, waiting to give birth in shame. She won't expect me to fight back. Then let's make sure she doesn't see you coming until it's too late. The plan was simple. In 2 weeks, the palace would host the autumn equinox celebration, the largest gathering of the year. Every noble family, every ally, every foreign dignitary would be present, including, according to Oren's sources, the Southern Isles princess who had been selected as Ilara's replacement. Ilara would arrive uninvited. She would present her evidence before the entire court, and she would watch Lysandre's empire of lies crumble in front of everyone who mattered. But simple plans had a way of getting complicated. 3 days before they were scheduled to leave, Ilara woke to the sound of horses. She moved to the window, each step an effort with the weight she carried, and felt her blood turn to ice. 6 riders in Valdrin colors were dismounting in the village square. At their head was a woman Ilara recognized instantly, Seraphine Vance, Lysandre's closest friend and most loyal enforcer. She found us. Ilara's voice came out strangled. Oren, she found us. The old woman was already moving, shoving supplies into a bag with practiced efficiency. The back door. There's a path through the hills that leads to the old mill. You'll be safe there until... A pounding on the front door cut her off. Open in the name of the Alpha King! Seraphine's voice rang out, sharp as breaking glass. We know the exile is inside. Surrender her, or this village burns. Ilara's hands flew to her belly, where her children were kicking as if they could sense the danger. She couldn't run. Not fast enough, not far enough, not carrying this weight. And she couldn't let these people suffer for sheltering her. I'll go out. The words tasted like ash. I won't let them hurt anyone because of me. Don't be a fool. Oren gripped her arm. If Lysandre sent them, it's not to bring you back for trial. It's to make sure you never speak again. The pounding grew louder. Wood splintered. Ilara looked around the tiny cottage, at the herbs drying on the walls, at the fire crackling in the hearth, at the old woman who had given her shelter when she had nothing. Then she looked at the evidence still clutched in her hands, the papers that could save her, the papers that could damn Lysandre, the papers that Seraphine had almost certainly been sent to destroy. The mill, Ilara decided. I'll hide there. But Oren, if they search the village, they won't find anything. Oren's smile was sharp. I've been hiding things from nobles since before Lysandre's mother was born. Now go. Out the back. Don't stop until you reach the water wheel. Ilara hesitated for one heartbeat. Then she grabbed her bag, tucked the evidence inside, and ran. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video and subscribe. The hills were steeper than she remembered. Every step sent pain shooting through her hips, her back, and her swollen ankles. Her lungs burned with exertion. Twice she had to stop, bent double, waiting for the cramping in her belly to ease. Behind her she could hear shouts. Doors being kicked open. Seraphine's voice demanding answers. Alara kept moving. The old mill appeared through the trees, a crumbling structure straddling a stream that had long since changed course. She ducked inside, pressing herself against the far wall, one hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her breathing. Footsteps crunched outside. "Spread out!" Seraphine's command was close, too close. She can't have gone far, not in her condition. Alara squeezed her eyes shut, her pulse pounding so hard she was certain they could hear it. "Please," she begged silently, to the moon goddess, to her mother's spirit, to anyone who might be listening. "Please let me survive this. Not for me, for them." The footsteps paused outside the mill door. A long, terrible moment of silence. Then they moved on, fading into the distance. Alara sagged against the wall, tears of relief streaming down her face. She'd survived. For now. But Lysandre knew where she was, and she wouldn't stop until Alara was silenced forever. The autumn equinox was in 3 days. 3 days to reach the capital. 3 days to stay alive. 3 days to destroy the woman who had stolen everything from her. Alara placed both hands on her belly, feeling her children move. "Hold on," she whispered. "Just a little longer. I promise I'll keep you safe." Oren found her at the mill 2 hours later, bruised but unbroken. Seraphine left empty-handed. The old woman helped Alara to her feet. "I convinced her you'd fled west toward the border. Bought us maybe a day's head start. That's enough." Alara's voice was steady despite her exhaustion. "I'm done hiding." They traveled through the night, Oren calling in every favor she'd accumulated over 7 decades. A cart ride here, a safe house there, a network of ordinary people who hated the crown's cruelty and were willing to help a pregnant woman fight back. By the second day, rumors had begun to reach them. The Alpha King had grown erratic, snapping at advisors, dismissing servants for minor infractions, spending hours alone in his chambers, refusing food, refusing company. "Guilt," Oren said with satisfaction. "It's eating him alive. Good." But Alara wasn't so sure. She remembered the look on Theron's face in that great hall, the absolute certainty in his accusations. Men like that didn't feel guilt. They felt justified, unless something had changed. The answer came on the morning of the equinox, delivered by a raven with a message that made Alara's heart stop. "The Alpha King has ordered a private investigation into the letters. He suspects the evidence may have been fabricated. Lysandre is furious. She's accelerating her plans. Be careful." The message was unsigned, but Alara knew the handwriting. Marin, still watching, still fighting. "He's starting to doubt." Alara looked up at Oren, hope and terror warring in her chest. "Theron is starting to doubt. Then we need to move now, before Lysandre can shore up her lies." They reached the capital as the sun was setting, the palace glittering on the hill like a crown of fire. Hood lower, one hand pressed to her aching, 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 making a Hood lower, one hand pressed to her aching back. In a few hours, everything would change. Either she would reclaim her name, her children's legacy, and her rightful place, or Lysandre would finish what she'd started, and Alara would disappear forever. There was no middle ground, no room for failure. She touched the evidence hidden beneath her cloak and walked toward the palace gates. The great hall blazed with light. 1,000 candles glittered from chandeliers and wall sconces, casting golden shadows across silk gowns and jeweled throats. The cream of Valdrin society had gathered to celebrate the equinox, to drink the Alpha King's wine and curry his favor. And there, seated at the high table, was Lysandre. She wore crimson tonight, blood-red silk that made her golden hair shine like a halo. She was laughing at something the man beside her had said, radiant, triumphant, every inch the princess who had won. Beside her, the Southern Isles princess sat in the place that should have been Elara's, young, dark-haired, beautiful, looking at Theron with practiced adoration, and Theron himself. Alara forgot to breathe when she saw him. He looked terrible, gaunt, hollow-eyed, like a man who hadn't slept in months. He sat rigidly in his throne, barely touching his wine, barely acknowledging the celebration happening around him. This was not a man enjoying his victory. This was a man being slowly hollowed out by it. Alara pushed through the crowd, her hood still raised, her blood pounding against her ribs. She was almost to the center of the hall when a hand closed around her arm. "I knew you'd come." Seraphine's smile was a blade. "Lysandre will be so pleased." "Let go of me." "I don't think so. You're going to come with me quietly, and we're going to have a little conversation in the dungeons where no one can hear you." Ilara drove her elbow backward, catching Seraphine in the stomach. The woman doubled over with a grunt, and Ilara pulled free, stumbling toward the high table. "Theron!" Her voice rang out across the hall. The music stopped. Every head turned. Ilara pushed back her hood, revealing her face, her pregnant form, the evidence clutched in her raised hand. "I have proof that I was framed," she shouted. "Proof that the letters were forged. Proof that your sister has been lying to you from the beginning." Chaos erupted. Guards surged forward. Nobles gasped and scrambled backward. Lysandre shot to her feet, her face twisted with fury. "Seize her!" Lysandre screamed. "She's delusional. She's dangerous." "Stop!" Theron's voice cut through the chaos like a thunderclap. He was standing now, staring at Alara with an expression she couldn't read, shock, hope, anguish, all tangled together. "Let her speak." "Brother, she's clearly—" "I said let her speak." His eyes never left Alara's face. "Guards, stand down, now." The guards hesitated, then obeyed. Alara walked forward on unsteady legs, her hand pressed to her belly where the twins were kicking frantically. She stopped at the foot of the high table, looking up at the man who had shattered her heart. "Read these." She held out the papers. "Practice sheets in my handwriting, created by a forger named Cedric Hollow. A note from your sister instructing him to destroy the evidence after he was paid. Your scribes lied, Theron. Or they were replaced with men loyal to Lysandre. Every piece of evidence against me was fabricated." Theron took the papers with unsteady hands. The hall was silent as he read, every eye fixed on the Alpha King's face as it transformed from confusion to disbelief to dawning, horrified understanding. "These are Lysandre's words." His voice was hoarse. "This is her handwriting." "Lies." Lysandre's composure cracked. "She's manipulated the evidence, brother. You can't possibly believe—" "I believe my own eyes." Theron looked at his sister, and Alara saw the moment his heart broke. "How could you do this? She was your friend. She was carrying my children, our family. She was an obstacle." All pretense of sweetness vanished from Lysandre's face, replaced by something ugly and desperate. "A common nobody who bewitched you into forgetting your duty. The Southern Alliance would have strengthened our kingdom. The heirs she carries would have diluted our bloodline. I was protecting you, brother. Protecting our legacy. By destroying an innocent woman? By making me—" Theron's voice cracked. "By making me believe my own mate had betrayed me? You were supposed to move on." Lysandre's voice rose to a shriek. "You were supposed to forget her and marry properly and give me the influence I deserved. I did everything right, everything." The confession hung in the air, heard by every noble, every servant, every foreign dignitary. Lysandre seemed to realize her mistake a moment too late. Her face went pale. "Guards." Theron's voice was ice. "Take my sister to the tower. She will await trial for treason, conspiracy, and attempted murder." "You can't do this!" Lysandre struggled as the guards gripped her arms. "I'm your blood, Theron. Your only family." "No." Theron's eyes were hollow. "You stopped being my family the moment you betrayed my mate." Lysandre was dragged from the hall, her screams echoing off the stone walls until they faded into silence. Then Theron turned to Alara. The great hall had emptied. Nobles had fled to gossip. Servants had scurried to spread the news. The Southern Isles princess had been escorted away by her furious chaperone, the alliance crumbling before it had ever truly begun. Only Alara and Theron remained, standing on opposite sides of a gulf that felt insurmountable. Ilara. His voice broke on her name. I don't know where to begin. Don't. She held up a hand, surprised by how steady it was. Don't apologize yet. I need you to understand what you did to me first. He flinched but didn't look away. Tell me. You humiliated me in front of everyone I knew. The words came slowly, each one a stone she'd been carrying for months. You called our children bastards. You threw me out with nothing, no money, no protection, no explanation beyond your sister's lies. I nearly died, Theron. Twice. Once from exhaustion on the road. Once when Lysandre sent soldiers to kill me. His face went gray. She what? 3 days ago. A woman named Seraphine led a squad to the village where I was hiding. They had orders to make sure I never spoke again. Ilara's hand pressed against her belly. I've been running for my life while you sat in this palace believing every poisoned word your sister fed you. I didn't know. The words came out strangled. Ilara, I swear to you, You didn't ask. Her voice rose. You didn't investigate. You didn't give me a single chance to defend myself before you destroyed my life. You were so certain, so absolutely convinced, that you couldn't even consider the possibility that you were wrong. Theron sank to his knees. The Alpha King, the most powerful man in the realm, knelt before her on the cold stone floor with tears streaming down his face. You're right. His voice was barely a whisper. I failed you in every way that mattered. I let my fear and my pride convince me that the woman I loved, the woman who had never given me a single reason to doubt her, had somehow betrayed me. And when I should have fought for you, I threw you away. He reached for her hand, then stopped, as if afraid she would recoil from his touch. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But please, Ilara, please let me try to make this right. Let me spend the rest of my life earning back what I destroyed. Let me be a father to our children. Let me... Stop. Ilara's voice was quiet but firm. Get up, Theron. He rose slowly, his eyes red, his face ravaged. I spent months dreaming about this moment. Ilara stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse racing in his throat. Imagining what I would say when you finally realized the truth. Sometimes I fantasized about rejecting you completely, walking away and never looking back, making you feel a fraction of the pain you caused me. Hope and despair warred in his expression. But I also dreamed about the man I married. Her voice softened despite herself. The one who found me in that backwater tavern and saw something worth loving. The one who held me through my nightmares and swore he'd protect me from anything. She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it slam beneath her palm. That man made a terrible mistake. He trusted the wrong person and hurt the right one. But he's also the father of my children. And I have to believe, that he's still in there somewhere. He is. Theron's hand covered hers, shaking. I swear to you, Ilara, on my life, on our children's lives, I will never doubt you again. I will never let anyone come between us again. Just give me a chance to prove it. Ilara studied his face for a long moment, searching for any trace of the cold stranger who had thrown divorce papers at her feet. She found only anguish and love and desperate hope. You don't get to be my husband again. Her words made him flinch. Not yet. Not until you've earned it. But you can be present when your children are born. You can prove that you've changed. And maybe, if you work very hard and I decide to let you, we can find our way back to each other. I'll take it. His voice was fierce with gratitude. Whatever you're willing to give, I'll take it. I'll spend every day showing you that I'm worthy of another chance. See that you do. Alara pulled her hand back, already missing his warmth. Now help me find somewhere to sit. Your airs have been kicking my ribs for the past hour and I'm exhausted. A broken laugh escaped him. Of course. Anything. Everything. He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. They walked out of the great hall together, not as husband and wife, not as Alpha and Luna, but as two people taking the first fragile steps toward healing. It was enough. For now. The twins arrived 3 weeks later on a night when the moon hung full and heavy over the mountains. Theron was there, as he'd promised. He held Alara's hand through every contraction, wiped the sweat from her brow, whispered encouragement when she screamed that she couldn't do this anymore. And when the first cry pierced the air, followed moments later by the second, he wept openly, without shame. A boy and a girl. The midwife placed the babies in Alara's arms, tiny, red-faced, perfect. Strong lungs on both of them. Alara looked down at her children, at the dark hair they'd inherited from their father and the stubborn set of their jaws that was entirely her own. Ronan, she said softly, touching the boy's cheek. And Lyra. Theron knelt beside the bed, his eyes never leaving the three of them. They're beautiful. His voice was rough with emotion. You're beautiful. All of you. They have your eyes. Alara traced the curve of Lyra's ear. Poor things. A surprised laugh burst from him. Did you just insult me while holding our newborn children? Someone has to keep you humble. But she was smiling. Really smiling, for the first time in months. The seasons changed. Lysandre's trial was swift and merciless. The evidence was overwhelming, her own words condemning her before the council. She was stripped of her title, her lands, her name. Exiled to a fortress on the frozen northern border, where she would spend the rest of her days in comfortable but absolute isolation. Theron had wanted execution. Alara had asked for mercy, not for Lysandre's sake, but because she refused to let her children grow up knowing their father had killed their aunt. He'd agreed because he'd promised to give her anything she asked for, and because he was learning, slowly, that strength and mercy weren't opposites. The courting began tentatively. Small gestures, meaningful ones. Theron learned what flowers she loved and filled her chambers with them. He remembered every food she'd craved during pregnancy and made sure the kitchens always had it ready. He took the night feedings without complaint, walking the halls with Ronan or Lyra pressed against his chest, singing off-key lullabies until they settled. And he listened. Every time Alara spoke about her pain, her fear, the nightmares that still sometimes woke her, he listened without defending himself, without making excuses. I was so angry, she told him one evening, watching the sunset from their balcony while the twins slept in the nursery. For months, all I felt was rage. At you, at Lysandre, at myself for trusting either of you. And now? Alara considered the question. Now I feel tired, hopeful, scared, and something else I'm not quite ready to name. Theron didn't push. He just stood beside her, close enough to touch but not touching, giving her space to find her own way. Ask me, Alara said suddenly. He turned to look at her. Ask you what? The question you've been wanting to ask for months. The one you've been holding back because you're afraid of my answer. His breath caught. Alara. Ask me, Theron. He faced her fully, his iron-gray eyes blazing with terrified hope. Will you be my wife again? The words came out unsteady. My Luna. My partner. My mate in truth. Not just in name. I know I don't deserve it. I know I broke everything between us. But I love you, Alara. I never stopped loving you, even when I was too blind to see the truth. And if you'll have me, I swear I'll spend every remaining day of my life proving that I'm worthy of your trust. Alara looked at him, this man who had fractured her heart, and then painstakingly gathered every fragment. She thought about the months of pain, the exile, the fear. The moment in that great hall when she'd believed she might never see her children born, and she thought about the months that came after. The gentle hands changing diapers at 3 in the morning. The whispered apologies she'd overheard him offering to the twins, promising them he would be a better father than he'd been a husband. The way he looked at her across crowded rooms like she was the only person who existed. People could change. As equals, as partners, no secrets, no. As equals, as partners, no secrets, no assumptions, no letting anyone come between us ever again. Agreed, his voice broke. Anything? Everything. Alara reached up and cupped his face in her hands. Then kiss me, husband. Theron kissed her like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. Deep, desperate, reverent. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and she felt the bond between them flare bright. Not a chain, but a bridge, connecting them in ways that went beyond words. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Alara pressed her forehead to his. Don't ever make me regret this. Never. The word was a vow. I swear on everything I am. Never again. From the nursery, a tiny cry broke the silence. Then another, joining in. Alara laughed, wiping her eyes. Your heirs demand attention. Our heirs. Theron took her hand, threading their fingers together. Come on, let's go be parents. They walked into the nursery together, and Alara looked at the life she'd built from the ashes of the one that had burned. A mate who had learned from his mistakes. 2 perfect children who would grow up knowing they were loved. A kingdom that had welcomed her back, not as the disgraced Luna, but as the woman who had exposed a traitor and saved her family. She'd walked into that baby shower expecting celebration and received devastation instead. But devastation hadn't crushed her. It had forged her into something stronger. And now, standing in the moonlight with her family around her, Alara finally understood what Oren had told her during those long months of hiding. The darkest nights produce the brightest stars. She was proof of that now. They all were. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.